All right, Ben, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
Great. Yeah. Sorry. I don't mean to air myself out immediately, but I am late for this interview and I'm sorry. I got home and just like we got home at 6 p.m. I was like, I feel like I got something to do. Just, of course, when I don't write it down on my calendar.
Yeah, I'm the worst about that too. It's all good, man. I'm just honestly grateful
We're
that
here
you
now. And again, like if I didn't say anything, nobody would know that I was late. But here we are.
yeah. No,
Just
I
got to
just
keep
I
it.
appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. Of course.
Well, so, I sent this over to Josh, but, ultimately the goal of this is, in a way, it parallels what you're doing, but, since you're in the arena, I feel like you'd be a really good one to talk to about this, right? So, this is the, I think, 18th or 19th video in a set of videos where our goal is to establish a question that I've been asking guys on many tours, high-level amateurs for years, right? So what's the difference? It's kind of a fact-finding mission for golfers out there who want to elevate their game to the next level. Maybe it's a sophomore, wants to play Division One golf, scratch wants to get to plus, or a mini tour guy who is really close and is just trying to get onto the main tour. So I thought it'd be really good. I know you've been around a ton of great players. You're a great player yourself. Obviously, pursued the PGA Tour. I just wanted to get a little bit of talk about your backstory first and talk about always press and what you got going on over there.
Yeah. Great. I'm excited to dive into that. It's definitely an interesting topic. I think for like the average golfer, it's really hard to tell the difference between even like a college golfer and a professional golfer, let alone like a good professional golfer and a great professional golfer. So this would be an interesting discussion. I mean, I want to see what questions you have that can help guide it, because obviously just asking the question like what's the difference is tough.
Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd like to probably just talk a little bit up first about who you are, where you're playing now. I'm sure a lot of people will know you because you've been around the YouTube space for quite a while now. But for those that don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about Q School last year. Maybe talk a little bit about your season and a little bit of your history first.
Yeah, so I am a professional golfer by trade. Well, I guess a YouTuber now. I've done a lot of YouTube stuff in the last, actually since I turned pro. Basically, like my journey was turn pro and didn't have the money to play professional golf, and started doing social media as a way to like build a resume, but like a more comprehensive resume than just handing people pieces of paper with like my golf achievements on it. I wanted to kind of give an idea of who I am as a person, and I feel like that's the best way to connect with people and find sponsors. And then accidentally found an audience of people who are interested in the, I guess, behind the scenes of the lower levels of professional golf. And I've been here for a little while, so I feel like I've got a decent look at what it's like to be, grinding it out in the mini tours and trying Monday qualifiers and just working my way up.
Yeah. So I got one for you that I think is interesting. So Ryan Sullivan, the guy maybe you've seen around the mini tours, maybe you haven't.
Yeah, Sully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sully was on here. Sully was actually my second guest.
Okay.
And he had something that I found has come up a couple of times, and I want to get your take on it because you and I are very similar in regards to we love working on mechanics, right?
Okay.
His biggest thing was whenever he was in, say, the 2013 US Open, he was so worried about the Konica Minolta Biz Hub swing vision, whatever they were going to say about his golf swing, and
Yeah.
not actually about the function of where the golf ball was going and whatever else.
Sure.
One, how big do you think mechanics play into it, and how much do you struggle with that as a player of you know, like the knockdown shot for you, for example, that, maybe you've struggled with as of late? Like, how much of it all goes together, and how much value do you put on mechanics over function?
Well, function 100% more important than mechanics. I think like how it works is at the end of the day like the only thing anybody who wants to be good at golf should care about. A good swing is better than a bad swing. And I think with good function comes good mechanics, right? So it's not necessarily like you can't have one without the other, really. But if you're going to prioritize one, it's 100% function over like the look of it. Now, mechanics, I think of not in terms of like, I don't think of mechanics necessarily in terms of how it looks, but in terms of how the body works together. And if you understand that, it makes it a lot easier to identify things that are wrong in your golf swing. Guys who say they never think about mechanics, I have a hard time believing that, because if something goes wrong in your golf swing, you have to know how to fix it. The golf swing is like any machine, really. And there's that book, The Golfing Machine, that's very. I've never read it. That's not necessarily. I don't take it that far necessarily, but I think if your swing gets out of whack and you know your mechanics well enough to fix it, that's all the knowledge you need of swing mechanics. But anything beyond that, I think you're kind of treading water.
Yeah, I feel like for me personally, I kind of struggle when I get to the end of the road and it's like I don't really know what to improve on mechanically because on
Sure.
paper I have a solid enough golf swing. So I guess it's a question of, for a lot of people out there, how do you make the difference from, okay, my golf swing's good enough to now I need to go into performance mode, and then how do you go about performance mode? Do you do drills? Like what do you do personally?
I very, very rarely. There was a stretch the last I'd say the last month I'm starting to get away from it. The last couple weeks maybe even. But there was a stretch where every time I went to the range, I was thinking about mechanics as I was walking to the range, and that's just not a really good place to be. I think the best thing you can do is go to the range with like shots in mind, not mechanics, but shots that you want to hit, right? And as you work through the shots that you want to hit, when you find shots that you have troubles with, do things that make it easier to hit those shots. And these are shots that you have to be able to hit, right? So um, let's say you're a cutter for the most part. You need to be able to hit a low, medium, and a high cut. Baseline, that's what you need to be able to do. If you get to the range and you can't hit a medium height cut, but you can hit a low one and a high one, you can't hit that controlled trajectory. That's when you start going, okay, what about my action is making it difficult for me to hit it through that window that I'm seeing? That's the only time you want to think about mechanics. And even then, like more just yeah, I mean anything about mechanics, it just needs to be stuff that's in your golf swing and relating to shots that you want to hit. So like I think a perfect example is I've talked to Willie Wilcox a lot, and Willie is one of the best I've ever seen in my life at hitting all the shots. He's got the tic-tac-toe board, low, medium, high, draw, fade, straight. He's got all of them. And even he said to me, I think if I were more of a one-trick pony, I would have seen more success. Because nailing down like what you're good at is so much more important than having every single shot. So go to the range, figure out the shots that you need to succeed. The shots you can't hit, that's where you take your mechanical exploration.
There's a couple of common threads there that I'd actually like to sit on. I've had Carl Morris and Scott Fawcett on the show. I know
Yeah.
you're well familiar with Scott.
Yeah, yeah.
Carl, I don't know if you're as familiar with him, but he was Louis Oosthuizen and Lee Westwood, Darren Clark's mental coach.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
so, yeah. And
Pedigree.
he talks about golf in terms of shots, right? So he doesn't, he's a big proponent of practicing shots when you're, this time of year taking an analysis of what shots maybe you struggled with. Like for me, it's long, like a hot pull. Scott calls it a hot pull, like the long left one. That's my trouble shot. And so, you know, Carl says the exact same thing that you said, right? Of whenever you're going to practice or whenever you're going to the range, wherever it is, he says ideally golf course, think about it in terms of shots and how you want to improve that. And then we had Scott on here, and I mean, as well as probably anybody, he is the biggest proponent of shaping it one way as much as possible, especially off the tee.
Yeah.
And that was one of his. He's the one who actually started this list of things, and you know, one of his big things is you have to have over 180-mile-an-hour ball speed. For you being a longer guy, would you agree with that? Do you think that's a little high? A lot of guys have said it's a little high, but would you agree that that's pretty reasonable number?
Going forward, if you want to be a top 10 player in the world, you're going to have a hard time if you're not Colin Morikawa or just, I mean, there's any guy, like, you need to be either the best iron player ever, or you're just not going to be able to be like one of the best players in the world, really. If you can't, like, if you physically cannot get over 180 ball speed, I have a really hard time believing that you're going to be able to compete with some of the best players in the world week in and week out. Now, there are going to be weeks where a guy who's a 165-ish ball speed guy is going to be able to compete, absolutely. But when we're talking about giving yourself the absolute best chance to succeed, we're seeing it more and more. Like, there's just too many high ball speed guys coming out these days that just are going to be able to play circles around guys who aren't hitting it as far as they are. And the reason being, like, just imagine for a second if you went to a par three contest and there was a certain group of guys who were able to move 30 yards ahead of everybody else. They don't have to be better golfers. Like they're just period. Like they don't have to be better. All they have to do is show up, and they're already going to have a massive advantage on every single hole. So like I'd say 180 ball speed. I think if you really sat him down, you're like, do you really think you're not going to be able to make it as a pro without 180 ball speed? He would say, well, no, we obviously, like if you're a 172 guy, you're going to be fine, or 170 guy, you're going to be fine. If you can't get out of the 60s, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle, but it's absolutely not impossible. It's just going to be hard.
Yeah, I told the story on that podcast, real similar to like what you did. I played with a guy named Sam Murphy, who I think you know as well.
That guy has one of my favorite golf swings on earth.
Yeah, agreed.
So
Same.
good.
Dude, I played with him at the Metro Open this year, and he knocked it probably 30 by me every hole, missed every putt it felt like, and shot 66. And I was like, yeah, like this is just silly. Like
That sounds about right until you said he missed every putt. I've seen him make a few.
well, and then the second day he made a whole lot.
There we go.
It
Yeah.
I say he missed every putt. It looked like he missed every
No,
putt.
I know
He
what
hit
you're
it to
saying. Like
15 feet
he's such a good ball striker that he doesn't have to make that many putts to shoot 500.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But that was kind of what got me thinking on it, because I'm like, dude, like it's just not even. It was it's a 7,300 yard golf course. It was wet. It was windy. It was kind of cold. It played so long for me, and I'm like a low 170s guy, and still it was just like a totally different game that he was playing.
Yeah, it definitely and it's like I just I see it the same as like it's just a bit of a handicap, right? And there's so many benefits that you get from being closer to the hole, other than just like, oh, I'm hitting a 7-iron, you're hitting a 9-iron. Well, let's take a look at that 9-iron. It's got what, 8 degrees more loft. It's going to have more spin, easier to control the distance, easier to control the trajectory, everything, and it's going to come in higher. So you're going to be below the hole more often. And if we both have 10 footers all day, you're above the hole and I'm below the hole, I'm going to kick your butt in a putting contest. That's just kind of how it works. And the numbers aren't that different. I think the number that Scott likes to point to is that the average make rate on a downhill 5-footer is still way higher than an uphill 8-footer.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, like, you make more putts from below the hole and you end up being below the hole more often when you're long. So there's just so many reasons why it's easier when you hit it farther, that it's kind of hard to deny that it's like the most important stat in the world right now. Like, you look at Scotty Scheffler, he's not exactly the fastest guy in the world, but he
He's
hits
not
so many
slow.
fairways.
Yeah.
Say again?
But he's not slow. I mean,
But he's not slow. He's a 180 guy and he hits a lot of fairways, and
yeah.
it's so massively beneficial. And if you go back however many years, I guarantee you look at the top 10 in driving distance every year, not driving distance, top 10 in driving, like strokes gained driving, you're going to recognize a lot more of the names on the strokes gained driving list than you are going to recognize on the strokes gained putting list.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I guess a
overall.
question that I would like to ask for you personally is, how hard do you find it to, going to approach play, control your spin, control your flight and trajectory, because you have so much speed? Like whenever after college, I gained like 10-mile-an-hour club speed, and
Wow.
yeah, I grew late, like gym,
Sure, yeah, totally.
whole ordeal. But like for me, I've experienced that with my extra speed, and I'm not anywhere near as fast as you. Like I'm a 115, 116 club speed guy. I have a hard time controlling like off-speed shots, flighted shots, all those sort of things. So is that something that you really have to practice on a lot and struggle with? Or
Yeah, I practice a lot on it, and I mean, I've been struggling with a lot of stuff lately. I guess we can add that to the list. But I think the main thing that I'm learning is clock system is really important. Because if you go trying to change your move through the ball, you're just never going to be able to dial it in that well. So my coach, Randy Searing, has always said your move through the ball should feel exactly the same every time. The only thing that should change is how far back you take it. So, I mean, just generally like any full shot,
yeah,
your move through the ball should be the same. Take it back a certain distance. And at that point, like, you don't have to slow it down to pick up speed to pick up speed. You don't have to slow it down to pick up control. You just have to shorten it, which is significantly easier than slowing it down, because your muscle memory gets all thrown off when you try to change impact. So that would be my, like, I guess, advice to myself. Like, just, keep grinding like a clock system of some kind, like how far back you take it, and it's going to get a lot easier to control your distance on those off-speed shots.
yeah, yeah. So getting back into the list now, one that I think is at least been really important for me, and Carl brought it up. It's under the umbrella of mental, right? So Scott started this
Yeah.
whole umbrella of mental of, hey, you have to meditate,
Hmm.
which I totally agree with. I think that's great. As I started to dive into the mental side of things with talking to some great players, there's so much more to it that goes into it with the mental side of things. And one that I think is actually very critical, and I'm finding that players agree with this, is being able to separate your golf and your golf scores from your own personal worth and personal identity. That's something that I've had a
Yeah.
really hard time doing and have worked a ton the last year and a half over. But I don't know if you've worked like that or thought about that.
Every day, every single day. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it becomes harder when you do something like, go and start a YouTube channel and hire your best friend to work for you under a business plan that really only succeeds when you play good golf. I think that, like, there are certain things, like, I've made it so much a part of my life that it is difficult to separate how I play versus my value as a person. Like, it seems to be pretty closely correlated, at least in my experience. And being able to, like, look at all the evidence that says the better you play, the more valuable you are, and still detach those things and say, like, my friends and my family are still going to love me. I'm going to be like, if I shoot 85 tomorrow, if I shoot 95 tomorrow, like, I'm still going to be okay. That makes it a lot easier to detach. And I think like the meditation is getting you to a point where you can detach your brain, like, just drop everything. Like, drop everything that isn't exactly the golf shot that you want to hit. And when you can do that, that's when you benefit. And I think what you're getting into, what you're pointing to, is great for, like, your overall mental health. But if we're just talking about getting on the golf course and hitting good golf shots, you can be like, you can genuinely, like, every other minute of your life, you're not going to be happy, but you could every other minute of your life think, if I don't hit good golf shots, I am worthless. If you think that every minute of your life, it's not going to affect the golf shot if you have the ability to drop everything, a la meditation,
Hmm.
and focus on the shot that you're hitting. It's a lot harder to do it that way, but if you're strong enough with your meditation, those negative thoughts, like, you can just get rid of them for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where the benefit of meditation comes. Is like, you don't have to change everything about every aspect of your life so that you think better over a golf shot. Meditation makes that a lot easier. It hones in on, like, the only time that matters is the 30 seconds before you hit a golf shot and the 10 seconds after. And if you can just get a stranglehold on those 40 seconds, as far as, like, being able to drop everything, that's where you see the real benefits. Now, if we're talking about, like I said, I feel like I've repeated myself a couple times, but if we're talking about overall happiness in life, absolutely detach your golf scores from how you feel about yourself. But if all you care about is your golf scores, all that matters is those 40 seconds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, and definitely I don't disagree with you. I think I don't know. I think anybody who's played competitive golf or even some level of golf with accountability or whatever, I think they can definitely relate to being able relate to going through that, right? Where
Yeah.
for me it's like if I play a bad round up in Cedar Rapids Open up in Iowa, it's like, oh, what are my sponsors going to think of this, or what, who's going to text me or whatever else. And I think
Yeah.
for me it took it's taken and still is taking a while to be able to separate those things. Like, I think that's one of the hardest parts about high level amateur or professional golf, whatever you want to call it, is being able to delineate the two. At least for me, it has been.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it's not important. It's extremely, extremely important, because your golf career is not going to be your entire life. I don't care how good you get. I don't care. Like, and I think if we look at every single example of guys who have long, successful careers where they stay healthy and they stay happy and they seem like they're, like, they have a fulfilled life, absolutely don't. They, like, do not think about golf an hour after they leave the course. Like, it's out of their heads completely. And so I think it's very important what you're talking about. I think it's extremely important. I think everybody should be trying to do it. And I also think that meditation, if all you care about is golf, Like genuinely. That's what you should be doing. So like it takes a long, long, long time to get to where you're at, where you're wanting to be, right? Where you can hit a bad golf shot and not care. That's really, really hard to do if you have the drive that's gotten you to the point where you're like trying to be a professional golfer. Anybody who's trying to do it cares a lot. So it's really difficult to do. And it's really important to do. I'm just saying, like, meditation overall.
Yeah. No, I think that's
Yeah,
great.
it's
So
a superpower.
yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Scott was talking about, when Will Zalatoris was going into Augusta, basically whenever he wakes up, he plays the song Time. If you guys have the Decade app, you will have heard Scott talk about this, right? But he does like a 4-hour moving meditation like every morning before a tournament. Like he puts an AirPod in, basically from the
Whoa.
time he wakes up, has the song Time by from Inception, Hans Zimmer, playing from the time he wakes up all the way through until when he pops it out on that first tee.
That's sick.
Yeah. Isn't that
That's
cool?
actually awesome.
Yeah.
That's so good. And honestly, like even if we're not even talking about like being really good at golf, that's just a good way to go through life. Like just kind of floating, being in the moment. Like everything, the only thing that matters is what's 3 feet in front of your face. Everything else doesn't matter, and only the things that you're looking at are what matter. That's like it's the presence is a superpower. Like being present is an absolute superpower. And it just feels so good when you're able to like fully be in the moment. So yeah, I mean like screw golf. That's just fun. Like being able to be present is amazing. And when you're present, then you don't really see the negative correlation between what like your bad golf scores on the course and how you treat the people that you love and how you interact with your life in general when you're not on the golf course. The more present you are, the easier that's going to be.
That makes sense. So for you, I mean, obviously transitioning from college to, mini tour, Canadian tour, you've been around a ton of phenomenal golfers. What do you feel like skills wise you see different? And then maybe, even up to someone like a Willie Wilcox or any of the other great players you've been around. What do you think are some of the biggest skills that are differentiating factors?
Starting where? Sorry.
Starting from college, and then we'll
Okay.
go to where you are now, and then we'll talk about to what you've seen with.
Yeah, so like when I was in college playing with good players in college, it was, you know, guys who had a lot of tools, but it really like the farther you get, the less mistakes you see, right? So, a really good player in college is going to lose focus for 3 holes around. A really good player at the professional level is going to lose focus for 2 holes around. A guy who's on Corn Ferry is probably going 1 hole around. PGA Tour, it's like 1 hole a tournament. So the guys who are able to stay focused and eliminate the big oopsies, those are the guys who you're going to see week in and week out. And not because they're just so much better than everybody else, it's because they just don't really make mistakes. So, like, I guess the simplest way I could put it is the higher up you go, the less dumb mistakes you're going to see. You're still going to see some dumb mistakes for sure. Like Scott talks about it ad nauseum, but you just see less.
Yeah, I like that take. Ties perfectly into it is a Scott theory, but it's also one that I've been doing some research into myself. And it's like pretty much split right down the middle right now on which is more important between bogey avoidance and birdies. Which you feel is more important. Is it more important to make a bunch of birdies, or is it more important to avoid bogeys?
Depends on the course. U.S. Open, bogey, the person who makes the least bogeys wins.
Mm-hmm.
Like just usually. The Sony Open, the person who makes the most birdies is usually going to win. Actually, that's not true. You know what? It's bogey avoidance. It's bogey avoidance because I just thought about it. It's actually kind of rare that the person who makes the most birdies wins the tournament. It's extremely common that the guy that makes the least bogeys wins. That happens all the time.
Yeah,
So there's my answer.
I have a running theory now at this point because I've been going back and forth on this, right? Like, because I'm a guy who will make 6 or 7 birdies and shoot even par.
Yeah, imagine if you didn't make the bogeys.
Right. That's neither here nor there. But my my running theory is that bogey avoidance is actually more important, and I say this because whenever I went all the way back to 2000, right? Like I looked at the names that were highest on the stat of bogey avoidance. Of course, it's Tiger because he's Tiger, but he was
For
also
sure.
number one pretty much every year. And who was number two most times than that was Phil. And you wouldn't think Phil would be someone, with his erratic play and, everything else. You wouldn't think he'd be someone who's real big on bogey avoidance, but almost every year he'd be number two or number three. And I thought
Yep.
that that was really interesting because I think we as golfers, especially, if you're playing a Monday qualifier, I know you just played one, but if you're playing a Monday qualifier, you think you got to go out and make all these birdies, and it's really tough to not have that in your head that you got to go make all these birdies.
Yeah, I think the thing that I always fall back on with that is it's a lot easier to try to not make bogeys than it is to try to make birdies.
Hmm.
And when you try to make birdies is when you make doubles. I think a really good example is this part. There's like, let's say there's a par three where there's, it's like an island peninsula type of green,
Hmm.
and the pin's on the right side, left side of the green. There's water left, pins on the left side. Really cool to like step up and try to stuff one there, but it's just so much smarter to just make par and move on. Like I guarantee you, of all the guys who missed by one at the Monday qualifier, if you went up to him in the parking lot and you said, "Do you wish that you had fired at that par three island green and tried to make birdie there, or do you wish that you hadn't made bogey on another hole?"
They're
Like
all gonna say no bogey.
they're all going to say they'd rather take away the bogey. Like you're never going to be upset walking away from the par three with a par. Almost never. Of course, unless you hit one to like 3 feet and miss the putt. But like if basically every professional golfer I know, if they're smart, if at the end of the week you told or at the beginning of the week you told them you're going to be even to 2 under on par threes this week,
Be insane.
they'd be like, absolutely, sign me up. This is
Yeah.
sick. Yeah, this is I just had the best par three week ever.
Hmm.
It's I think it's just so much more common. And you look at golf from the very beginner stages up to the very top, the fact that we're even discussing bogey avoidance with the number one players in the world tells me that it's bogey avoidance. If anybody on the planet benefits more from making more birdies, it would be the best players in the world. But we still talk about bogey avoidance with them.
Hmm.
So I think it's just across the board. It's got to be that one.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I had a guy by the name of Tim O'Neill on here that played on Champions Tour.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
What a great story. I mean
dude,
that's the
so
kind of
cool.
thing that like you talk about always pressed. That's how you do it right there. What is he, 52?
52, I think. Yeah,
52, never really did much in professional golf and just kept trying. And like look at him now. Like he's like sponsored by Michael Jordan and stuff. Like he's
yeah. I
doing
mean,
he's doing
he just won
amazing.
on the Champions Tour like
Exactly. Yeah.
4 months ago.
Yeah, no, the guy is a big inspiration. I really like seeing that. Anyway, sorry, what did he say?
No, that's okay. So his thing was, I asked him the question, and he was like, "Oh, it's making birdies for sure." He goes, "But I will say, I had a friend of mine, and I think it's Scott. I think he just didn't want to say it, but he said I had a friend of mine tell me for 10 tournaments to basically not fire at a flag, right? Like follow decade strategy, but basically not fire at a flag." He goes, "Give me 10 tournaments of perfect adherence to the strategy, and you'll win." And or no, sorry, give me 6 tournaments and you'll win. And he goes, and I did it and I won in 8. And I was like, that is nuts. Like the fact that he felt like the only things that changed versus earlier in his career was his short game got better and he stopped firing at flags is like kind of nuts. Like he's like, that's all that changed. Like my mind didn't change. Kind of,
Yeah,
some putts just went in, but my short game got better and I just didn't fire at flags. I'm like, that's just so crazy.
it's absolutely a way to do it. I mean, and when what pros say versus what they do, Scott talks about this all the time. Totally different things. Like you'll. I mean, yeah, you see it a lot.
Yeah,
You see it, and you hear it a lot. Guys who are like, "No, I fired every flag," and then you look at where they hit it, and well, they didn't. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, let's. You touched on Always Press there. I'd like to give you a second to plug Always Press, talk about the meaning behind it, what you're doing over there. I mean, I myself,
yeah. Heck yeah, man.
I own the hat and that
Yeah,
stuff.
you got the OG. That's the first one. Actually, so that hat's a funny story. I was at Marco Scarola's workshop, and he's the guy that made our head covers. By the way, the head covers in the shop, I know they're pricey. Just want to put this in for a second. They're made in the USA. Not only that, they're made by a mini tour pro by hand. He hand stitches these head covers with genuine leather, or not genuine leather, full grain leather. and like he is a professional golfer who does all this stuff by hand. So like they're amazing. He does incredible work. Anyway, I was in his shop and I wanted to make an always press hat. I had like the font with like the curved arch and the whatever. I just thought it looked cool, and that was the one hat he had in there. Was that tan, uh, the tan rope hat. So that's how that ended up being the first colorway that we went with. It just happened to be the only one he had, but it
Sick.
turned out pretty good. I thought I liked it. But yeah, so the always press stuff, we kind of just with the whole YouTube thing, like it's a I feel like everybody says bet on yourself a lot, bet on you, bet on you, bet on you. Sorry, everyone says bet on yourself. We kind of took it into bet on you, but we didn't really feel like that was the best like slogan. It didn't really we didn't love it necessarily. We like it as like a secondary thing. There's going to be some stuff coming out that says bet on you, by the way. But always press was like just honestly a mindset that I've had for a while. Gambling on the course, unfortunately, is kind of where it came from. But I find myself in these golf matches, even if I'm playing the worst golf I've ever played, and I'm just I know like mathematically it doesn't make sense to press. I always do it, and it just has ended up working out. And I feel like the overall like it can get you into a lot of trouble, but it can also get you out of a lot of trouble. And when you think about it, if you press every single time and you win once, that's all it takes. So it's a process. It's a way to think about life. Like you're going to get kicked down. You're going to lose a lot. But if you win once, pressing every single time makes it worth it.
That's good. I actually never knew the story behind it with that, and definitely it does make sense. I have some buddies who we do also unfortunately play some money games, and they press all the time, and they always seem to somehow be the ones walking away with money, even though they maybe didn't even play the best out of the group.
And the reason for it, and the reason that we ran with this so hard is because when you press, even if you don't think you should, you have then put it in everyone else's head that you think you're going to win. And and it's kind of like a fake it till you make it kind of thing. Like even if you think it's a bad idea to press, obviously there are situations where if you're putting for bogey from 30 feet and your partner is putting from 3 feet, don't press. That's very dumb. But but most situations, like if you feel like there's a way that you can get out, now you've bet on yourself. So you've given yourself your own vote of confidence. And the person you're playing against is like, wow, he's really confident. I'm not sure why that is, but now I'm nervous. I don't know. It's kind of corny, I guess. I think I'm just kind of a corny guy in general, so it works out. But I think it's just it's a mindset that's worked for me, and I know like things haven't been going incredibly well with the golf career at this exact point in time. But I know that I'm going to continue pressing. I'm going to continue betting on myself, and even if it doesn't work out the way I thought it was going to, it's going to work out. And the only way that I can guarantee it won't work out is if I don't continue to bet on myself. And I think that's just kind of the way that, unfortunately, that's kind of the way you got to look at it when things are down. Like you just continue to bet on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, what's the saying? The only way you lose is if you
The
quit.
only way you lose is if you quit. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit now about what you kind of have on tap for this season. I know we're early in the year. I'm
Yeah.
sure you're excited. I mean, I don't know what you have on tap in terms of how much you want to play. If you want to take a bit of time to to feel like you get prepared. If you're itching to get back out there. I don't know where you are right now, but maybe talk a little bit about that.
We are, yeah. I mean, I've been playing some tournaments lately. I kind of got into this weird, went into a bit of a slump, went and saw a coach, didn't really work out. Like, I just kind of went down a bad path with my swing where I didn't really like what I was doing. And now I'm trying to dig myself out of that hole while trying to get back to where I was when I didn't really feel like I was playing that good to begin with. And then it's the vicious cycle of a slump, and we're slowly trying to climb our way out of it, but in a way that's just pivoting off of mechanics and pivoting off of thinking about the golf swing too much and just trying to simplify. And so the plan for this season has been we want to play as many tournaments as we can, but before that happens, I need to get my feet back under me. So who knows? And honestly, we don't really know how long that's going to be. And I wish I could give an answer of next month tournament vlogs are coming back. It could be next month. It could be next week. It could be 2 months from now. I have no idea. But the one thing I know is like my priority with everything is just playing as good a golf as I can and giving myself the best chance I have to get a card on the PGA Tour and win on the PGA Tour and win and and do all the stuff I've always dreamed of doing. So as far as like professional golf goes, we're kind of we're just letting it be its own thing for now. And so for the channel, like we're having fun. We're trying to enjoy playing golf as much as possible because I feel like that's another way for me to get myself out of this is by
Yeah,
stopping with all the pressure that I put on myself. And I get comments about it all the time. Like people, they can see the weight of like what all the pressure I put on myself playing golf.
definitely.
And trying to get away from that has kind of been our focus of like, we want golf to be fun. Because if it's not fun, one, there's no point. And two, I have no chance of making it. I have to enjoy it. So yeah, I mean, like the journey has been lately, like let's enjoy golf because if I enjoy golf, I'm gonna play better golf. So that's I hate to give like a non-answer, I guess, but
No,
that's
I think that's why I kind of opened it up the way I did, right? I've certainly been there. Unfortunately, I actually got in a car accident about 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago. I haven't hit a ball in 10 weeks. I got
oh my,
rear-ended.
are you okay? What's going on?
Two bulging discs in my neck. So I'm going a little crazy right now, a little stir crazy, which is actually
Totally
how this
understand.
all started, right? Because I hope to go over to Q school in Europe, ideally at the end of the year, potentially.
Well, I hope to
And
see you there.
yeah, that'd be sick, man. It was trying to figure out, okay, how can I talk to as many great players as possible, and try and figure out what they know that maybe I don't. I got a little bit of a later start in golf. My scoring average this past year was like 72, so I need to drop about two and a half shots this year. So I'm trying to figure out how do I go from here to here, and that's kind of how all of this kind of started.
That's great. What's the name of this podcast? You can cut this out, but what's the name
Yeah.
of this
Oh, it's
podcast?
called "What's the Difference."
What's the okay? Great.
Yep.
Okay, great. That's a great name. It's a
Yeah.
perfect name. Well, yeah, I this has been it's a very interesting project. I definitely like the idea of it because everybody's going to have a different answer, right? But you're going to see common themes throughout it. How many episodes? You said you've done 18 episodes now?
Yeah. This is episode 18 or 19, I think.
This is episode
19.
okay. So you've
Yeah.
done 17, 18
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah.
Like what's the most common theme so far? I'm curious now.
Your mind and how
Yeah.
you utilize
Okay.
it.
Checks out. Yeah.
I think it's all the parts of the mind though. Like, James Colin Davis, who's an up and coming YouTuber, he talked about like overcoming his imposter syndrome that he had, in golf and feeling like he didn't belong. James Nicholas talked about just being able to outwork everything and then just have this undying self belief in yourself as being really important. Ryan Sully talked about being able to have autonomy over your game and hit the shots, which is real similar to like what you talked about.
Yeah.
Scott talked about meditation. Carl Morris talked about separating identity and also being able to accept. And that's the mental side of things is probably the biggest one that's come up. I think everybody kind of accepts that you need to be a great lag putter. That's one that's just like fully cemented in there.
Yeah.
You need to be over 170 ball speed. That's also one that kind of just has to be in there. Bogey avoidance is important. Another one that's come up that I don't want to say it sucks that it's come up, but it's tough because it's not truly one you can control, is timing, right? So playing well at the right time, especially for Q school. So like Dawson Jones was on here and he was talking about,
Yeah.
that he played well at the right time to get, the Korn Ferry Tour conditional status that he did this year. And, Sully was playing. I mean, dude, I think, like, Sully, I think, had 9 times he missed Mondaying by one shot this year. And it's just like, if that doesn't show. And he talked about, it's either Eric Cole or Ryan Cole won the money list on the Rolling Red, I think, tour. Or, yeah. And then didn't make it past first stage. And it's like, if that isn't, like, just showing how important timing is, it's just it's tough when you think about it like that, where it's like you have all these great players that you just don't play well at the right time. Like that's kind of a tough one, and I don't know. It's
No,
one that's
timing's certainly tough, and like
yeah.
but at that point it becomes. Are you religious?
Yes.
Okay, so that I mean, then great, yeah, everything's gonna work out the way it's supposed to. It's all gonna happen according to plan. If you're not meant to play well at Q school, then you're not meant to play well at Q school. Something else is gonna happen. Actually, so there's two. I've heard this explained in two different ways. Like people who aren't very religious respond to it or refer to it as lucky girl syndrome, where if something like if you're 100% sure something is going to happen, like let's say you're 100% sure that you're going to win Q school, and then you go and you don't play well and you miss the cut. The lucky girl syndrome, you start to think, oh my God, that didn't happen. The most amazing thing is going to happen next month. And that, like, in just knowing that, like, something good is going to happen eventually, and being in, like, that mindset of, like, well, okay, that didn't work out, but this next thing's coming. And I know that's hard with Q school because you only get one try a year,
Yeah.
but having that thought of, this is the week, absolutely 100%. And if it's not, the next week is. It's that shooter's mentality, right? I think that's that overall, like we talked about overall happiness outside of golf, just that being able to fall back on either your religion or your lucky girl syndrome and understand that everything's going to be okay. Like it doesn't really even matter at that point. Like if I don't make
Yeah.
it, if I don't make it to the PGA Tour, I'm going to be fine. That's and I can say that, but I don't. I think deep down, I don't believe it yet.
Yeah.
And I think once I believe it, I'm going to be better off. And I think everybody will be.
I think that's such a beautiful way of putting it. Like for me personally, on a personal note, I'm going through a bit of a tough breakup at the moment from someone who was real important to me, and I think it's really important to remember in these times that everything does kind of happen for a reason. Things happen, and you have to stay, like you said, either the lucky girl syndrome or fall back on your religion. I think that's such a beautiful frame to be able to think about life in that way. And but it it can be tough. Like maybe you've had a bad start to the season, or I had a rough start to my season last year. Like I think it can be so tough, and it just speaks to the importance of how important the mind is. So I really like that frame.
Yeah, I mean it's the way you think about things is so important. And there's a million studies and a million different verdicts and they all come back to the same thing. The mind is very powerful. Extremely powerful. And I think there's no scientific study that can really fully flesh out just how important the mind is. Just knowing that it is that strong, like what you think about will happen, and being able to control what you think about in that way is extremely overpowered. And also just kind of having faith and whatever happens and everything's going to shake out the way that it's supposed to. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah,
hard. Like when you look at it from that mind frame, it's really easy to just kind of be like, well, yeah, everything's great, nothing matters. But then you stand over your first tee shot at Q school and it feels like you're going to die if you don't hit the fairway.
yeah, yeah,
So it's just fighting through that, I guess. But
yeah.
that's life. That's like everybody has that struggle.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, man. As we kind of wrap up here, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to give you a chance to plug any of your other sponsors, any clubs, anything that you would like to take the time to plug right now. I just wanted to give you that opportunity.
I just signed with Beach, so shout out to them.
Yeah, I saw that actually. Congrats.
Yeah, how sick are these threads, huh?
Yeah, I think
Looking
other than Dylan Meyer, you're the
somewhat
only
put
person
together.
I know that reps them.
They actually have a pretty solid stable, like Taylor Moore, Brian Harmon,
Really,
Justin Leonard, Jim Furyk, Brad Faxon.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people I'm hoping to collab with in 2025.
Yeah,
I mean, those are a lot of people I definitely look up to,
yeah,
and everybody I've talked to within the Summit Golf Brands families is excited about what they've got going on over there. So there's that one. Always press. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see me figure my stuff out, and make sure to subscribe to What's the Difference, because this is important stuff that you're doing here. And I think after you get 100 episodes in or whatever, and you can go back and make a super cut of like the most common themes, I think this is going to be a really cool experiment within the world of golf. So keep doing what you're doing, keep going. Nice
cool.
sweatshirt.
Yeah, shout out
And
Mike.
keep me posted. Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like to keep up with what you're doing. This is cool.
we'll do, man. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.